Well, good evening. It is Warmies time here in the Sports Interaction Studio. I'm your host, Mike Gould, back with you as the Calgary Flames are getting set to take on the Edmonton Oilers in their final game before the 2026 Winter Olympics. And it has been a day in the hockey world, to say the least. Holy smokes! From minute one to now to 7:29 p.m. It has been no better way to put it, a day. Glad to have you along with us here on the Sports Interaction Studio. We'll get things kicked off by having a look at the betting lines. And the Flames, they are not exactly a top team in the National Hockey League. The lines aren't that lopsided for this game. The Flames at plus 115, the Oilers at minus 135, the over-under set at 6.5, the spread at 1.5 plus or minus. Have a couple of pre-built same-game parlays from the good folks over at Sports Interaction as well. One of them at plus 150, 2+ points for Leon Draisaitl, and Draisaitl over 2.5 shots on goal. And then also a bit of a more intricate one at plus 375. Oilers at minus 1.5 on the spread. A couple of points each for McDavid, Draisaitl, and Bouchard. That again at plus 375. That's a look at the initial lines from the folks over at Sports Interaction. And this opening segment brought to you by Sports Interaction Sportsbook and Casino, where every game is your game. From puck drop to overtime, you can bet with Canada's homegrown sportsbook. 19 plus. Please play responsibly at sportsinteraction.com/FlamesNation. This is the fourth and final meeting of the season between the Flames and the Edmonton Oilers. The second at the Scotiabank Saddledome, the most recent coming on December the 27th, when the Flames beat the Oilers by a 3-2 final score. And no bones about it. Let's just take a look at the lineups for the Calgary Flames in this game. We're expecting, a pretty familiar look. It is Backlund, Kadri, Frost, and Pospisil, the centers for the Calgary Flames. Matty Coronato and Igor Sharangovich on that top line with Michael Backlund. That was a line that had a ton of chances in the most recent game against the Maple Leafs on Monday. Kadri with Zary and Farabee, Frost with Gridin and Huberdeau, Pospisil with Klapka and Ryan Lomberg up front for the Calgary Flames. If you'll remember that game on December the 27th, it was Sharangovich, Lomberg, and Coleman with the goals for the Calgary Flames. Of course, still no Blake Coleman in the lineup today for the Flames. On the back end for the Calgary Flames, it is Zane Parekh wearing number 19, not 89, still in the lineup after his game against the Toronto Maple Leafs a couple of days ago. Parekh still on the third pairing with Joel Hanley. Parekh played over 20 minutes in that game against the Leafs on Monday, so he is feeling ready. He's coming off arguably his best NHL game to date. The other two pairings remaining the same: Yan Kuznetsov with Mackenzie Weegar and Kevin Ball with Zach Whitecloud for the Calgary Flames. And it will be Devin Cooley between the pipes for the Flames this evening. Cooley, of course, has been a great story for the Flames in his first full NHL season to date. And he'll be going up against Tristan Jarry for the Oilers. It was Dustin Wolf between the pipes for the Flames in their last outing against the Oilers back on the 27th of December. But this time it'll be Cooley, who has far better numbers than the goaltender at the other end of the ice. Cooley this year has a 6-6-3 save percentage, 6-6-3 record with a 921 save percentage. A 663 save percentage wouldn't be very good. A 921 save percentage with a 6-6-3 record. Tristan Jarry, since coming over from the Oilers, has not really been much of an upgrade. But for what he makes up in his play, he has a longer contract with a higher cap hit. Maybe not the best move the Edmonton Oilers could have made at that point in time. Jarry has an 873 save percentage with the Oilers this season in 10 games since the deal. Still don't really get how the Oilers were able, or how the Penguins rather were able to parlay 14 games out of a goaltender who cleared waivers last season and who is making $5 million for 2 years after this one. How they were able to turn his value around in 14 games to the point where the Oilers gave up Brett Kulak, Stuart Skinner, and a second-round pick to get him out of Pittsburgh. But we shall see. Tristan Jarry's first test against the Calgary Flames in today's action. So that'll be one to watch for certain. Now, of course, we'll get to the Edmonton Oilers lineup in a moment. Actually, no, let's just get to it right away. The Oilers are playing obviously some solid hockey of late, although they've been up and down to a certain degree. They got pumped by the Toronto Maple Leafs last night with Matias Maccelli scoring a couple of goals. The thing that really gets to me here, though, is this bottom six for the Edmonton Oilers. Curtis Lazar is back in. Josh Szymanski and Matthias Janmark rather as the centers in the bottom six. Szymanski is a recent call-up. Matthias Janmark is not really a center, but he's playing center for the Oilers. You know, you've got McDavid and Draisaitl obviously in the top six, but the Oilers have such a they have such a tendency to put those guys on the same line at the first sight of anything going wrong that you wonder how this center depth is going to fare as the season goes on. Obviously, the Trent Frederick acquisition has been a huge bust, and the forward depth just remains the same weakness in Edmonton that has been for so long. We saw Zach Hyman passed over for an Olympic berth. Sam Bennett will be replacing Anthony Cirelli at the Winter Olympics. And I mean, the rest of this group is just a real hodgepodge. So Andrew Mangiapane, a very familiar face, still on the fourth line. We saw him be benched by Chris Knoblauch in yesterday's game against the Maple Leafs. Despite, in my opinion, looking maybe as good as he's looked all year, he still got benched by Chris Knoblauch in that big loss to the Oilers, to the Maple Leafs for the Oilers. On the back end, the Oilers going with a group that is fine. I still think they're short a top four option in a certain respect, and that a lot of that has to do with Darnell Nurse, who is still playing very poorly, even after, long after Cody Ceci is no longer his partner. It doesn't seem to matter. But you still have Matthias Ekholm and Evan Bouchard as the top pairing. Jake Wallman is a pretty good player. He's on Darnell Nurse's right side. And then Spencer Stastny and Ty Emberson. Feels like the Oilers really need to make an upgrade on that spot on the third pairing. The Oilers are a funny team. Everybody in the Pacific Division right now is kind of a certain degree of unsuccessful. The Oilers, they've lost more games than they've won. They're 28, 21, and 8 through 57 games this season. In every other division, that would have them in wildcard territory. In the Pacific, it has them tied for first. They've played 2 more games than the Vegas Golden Knights, who are in first place with the same 64 points, but in 55 games. But the Oilers are really in danger here of falling out of the mix if they lose more games. They've lost back-to-back. They're just okay away from Rogers Place this season. They're 13, 11, and 4. And their goal differential is not really much to write home about. They are +5 on the season to date. So we have seen Oilers teams in the past that have struggled at points despite having excellent underlying metrics. That's not really the case with the Oilers this season. They've been much more of a mixed bag. So we shall see how it plays out for them as the season goes on. Of course, this being the last game before the Olympics, the next time that we see the likes of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl will be in Milan as they take on the nations of the world at the Winter Olympics. The first time we've seen NHL players in that competition since 2014. Of course, only one player for the Flames going to that tournament, and that is Marty Pospisil. Now, we touched upon it a little bit off the top. It has been a day in the hockey world for a number of reasons. And I wasn't too surprised logging on this evening and seeing that there are already a ton of comments in the chat. And maybe we can even get some pregame super chats, which benefit the youth centers of Calgary. That would be really, really nice. But wow. It doesn't really take a detective to see the number one topic that is on the top of people's minds. And that is the St. Louis Blues trading Nick Bjugstad to the New Jersey Devils earlier today in exchange for the rights to prospect Thomas Bordeleau and a 4th-round pick. That one has the people abuzz. But really, it's also 2 other stories that are, dominating the discourse. And quite frankly, with respect to the Gavin McKenna story, we're not going to touch upon it very much. There's not a whole lot that is going through this show as it pertains to Gavin McKenna. Obviously, we'll just delve into the facts. He was charged with a number of counts related to an altercation that happened after the outdoor game against Michigan State over the weekend at sort of State College town. I forget what it's called in Pennsylvania. It's a weird story. It's a story that, quite frankly, I don't think is going to have much of an impact on his draft stock at the end of the day. I am very curious to see just how it impacts his immediate future as a prospect if he remains at Penn State, what the ramifications are there as far as the charges, how they impact his standing at the school, if we see him come back to the WHL. But it is not really a story, quite frankly, that I think we stand to gain much from discussing on this show. As much as I know the folks in the chat would love to. I'm sure the Barn Burner boys will have lots to say about it. I know the nature of some of the rumors out there. But quite frankly, I just think that hopefully everything works out. That's really all I've got to say, because as it stands, there's lots of conjecture. There's lots of sort of comments, but I don't really know that there's really much for us to gain by discussing it, other than to say, again, I don't think it'll have a whole lot of ramifications as far as his draft stock is considered. I had somebody today reach out to tell me that if anything, they think his draft stock might improve by what we've seen over the last. I mean, it's easy to forget before these charges were laid, Gavin McKenna had back-to-back games at Penn State of 15 penalty minutes. He was kicked out of back-to-back games. So I don't know what's going on down at Penn State with Gavin McKenna, but I don't really expect to see. I'm sure it'll probably just end up with things being brought down to community service or something like that. So don't really have much of a take on that, as you know, just it's not really the nature of this show. There is one thing that also happened today that is a lot that has gotten a lot of people's minds, and that is the Artemi Panarin trade. Artemi Panarin heading to the Los Angeles Kings from the New York Rangers. This is a big deal. This is a deal, in my opinion, that is really, really bad for the New York Rangers. The LA Kings getting a top winger in the game, not necessarily in his prime, but a player who can still have a positive impact on the ice. Now, I'm very curious to see how it impacts the rest of the Pacific Division, because it is a division that is just, we sort of touched upon it with the Oilers. It's a terrible division this season. The Kings are outside the playoff spot, or outside of the playoff picture right now, as they deservedly should be. They're if you go by regular 500, as it stands, the Kings have won 23 games and they've lost 31. They're 8 games below 500, and they're 1 point out of a playoff spot, because that's the way the NHL standings work. And Panarin really apparently wanted to go to the Kings for reasons I don't know. They're about to lose Anze Kopitar after this season. Drew Doughty's going to be like 37 before long. But Panarin himself, he's 34. He signs a 2-year extension as part of the deal at $11 million a year. And I mean, it does make the Pacific more interesting. I'm curious to see how it impacts the Oilers, how it impacts the Vegas Golden Knights. We talked a lot about it on the last edition of the Afterburner, how the Flames have a lot of skin in the game as it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights the rest of this season. And going to Panarin going to LA is something that could have a very substantial impact on how the rest of the season plays out with Vegas, with the Edmonton Oilers, with the Anaheim Ducks, with the Seattle Kraken, all these Pacific teams that are sort of locked in this mushy middle, as it were. It is all so close. There's no team that has really escaped the pack. So LA getting that player is good news if you're the Calgary Flames and you want to see the Vegas Golden Knights tumble down the standings a little bit. It is a curious fit from an LA standpoint, but obviously a win for LA getting that player for as little as they gave up. Liam Greentree, the prospect from LA, and that deal looked so good with the Windsor Spitfires last year. But I think it's very fair to question how much of that had to do with the players he was playing with. You look at Ilya Protas, who has gone on to be a very good AHL player already with the with the Hershey Bears in the AHL. And he's no longer there, and Greentree's numbers have gone way, way down this year. And the fact that, they couldn't even get a bona fide pick in the top 2 rounds for a player of Panarin's caliber, obviously it's a sign that Panarin really dictated this. And obviously he had a real desire to go to a certain city. We have seen now Panarin in the NHL sign with only 3 different teams, only 3 different cities: Chicago, the Rangers, and LA. He's traded to Columbus. He plays out his contract, which he had previously signed in Chicago, and then immediately leaves for New York at the first opportunity. So clearly, this is a guy who is, motivated by where he plays. But to me, it's really bad. It's a really bad form deal for Chris Drury and for the New York Rangers. I mean, it sort of puts some of the deals that Craig Conroy's made in a different light, I think. Obviously, the Flames haven't been moving anybody with a full no-move clause, and the Flames have been able to build up more of a rental market for some of their players, but it still sort of just looks funny when you see a guy of Panarin's caliber going for so little, and then you hear all about Rasmus Anderson and Noah Hannafin having sort of put Craig Conroy into a corner, and yet they still get first-round picks and prospects and those types of pieces for those types of players who, to me, are lesser players, much lesser players, and much lesser assets than Artemi Panarin is. So it is just, to me, it is a deal that really reshapes the makeup of the Pacific Division. Remember the Barbie, less league talk and more Flames talk. These shows on the Nation Network becoming repetitive. They'll talk about this on Afterburner too. Yes, we will, because it's the big news of the day. But you're right. We should pivot back to the Calgary Flames, the Edmonton Oilers. In tonight's game, we'll have a look at one of the props from Sports Interaction. Let's have a look at it, producer Michael, because we're looking at a couple different ones. Anytime goal scorer and first goal scorer. The one on the right is just Flames players at plus 225, plus 240, plus 260, plus 275, and plus 310, respectively. We look at Nazem Kadri and Matt Coronado and Igor Sharangovich and Michael Backlund and Jonathan Huberdeau. It's been a few games since we saw Igor last find the back of the net. He's been all around it. I would be maybe tempted by that particular line on number 17. And then over on the left side, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, Igor Sharangovich, and Nazem Kadri all there for first goal scorer. Not surprised to see Igor there as he scored the opening goal in the last Calgary versus Edmonton game. As we mentioned, the Flames and Oilers, they've played 3 games already against each other this season. The Flames defeating the Oilers back on opening night by a 4-3 final score in a shootout. The Oilers beating the Flames 5-1 in Edmonton a couple of nights before Christmas. And then a couple of nights after Christmas, it was the Flames edging the Oilers 3-2 at the Saddledome. This is the second of back-to-back games between these two teams at the Saddledome in the season series. So a couple of looks at the different props over at Sports Interaction, where every game is your game. Get in on the action with parlay boosts, live betting, and easy deposits and payouts. Bet now at sportsinteraction.com/FlamesNation. 19 plus, please play responsibly. There is some more dedicated Flame stuff we should mention just before puck drop. We should mention Gridin and Hunter Brzustewicz, in all likelihood, going back to the Calgary Wranglers after this game. We saw Brzustewicz scratched for a game a couple of games ago. I think it was to get Braden Bahal back in, and now, of course, Zane Parekh is back in. But that scratch for Brzustewicz made him eligible to go back down to the AHL during this Olympic break. The rule is 16 out of 20 games. If you have dressed for fewer than 16 out of the team's last 20 games before the Olympic break, you are eligible to be sent back down to the Wranglers during the break. And so that's what we expect to see with Matvei Gridin and Hunter Brzustewicz with the Wranglers during the Olympic break. My 2 cents is I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Matvei Gridin come back up after the break, and if we saw Hunter Brzustewicz stay down again after the break. Not because he's any lesser of a player, but just because I think the Flames want to give Parekh a little bit more rope. And after trading Jeremy Poirier to the Dallas Stars for Gavin White, my expectation is that the Flames will want to see Brzustewicz maybe anchoring the number 1 power play unit for the Wranglers the rest of this season. The Wranglers have had a bit of a tough go, and they'll want to make the playoffs this year and get these guys some big game opportunities. And if Brzustewicz is down there, it gives them a better chance to do that. So we will see the Wranglers play a regular schedule still over the Olympic break. Matvei Gridin has been selected to represent the Wranglers at the upcoming AHL All-Star Classic, so he will get to do that. And then my expectation is he will come back up for the Flames after the Olympics are complete. We're really coming up, though, to the end of sort of this pre-deadline run for the Calgary Flames. I mean, you look at it, they only have 5 games after they come back from the Olympic break until it's the deadline. And we're going to see a lot of stuff, I think, come to fruition. What we saw last year, this is actually a really good point that I saw somebody bring up earlier today that I hadn't really thought about, but it is true. We saw something similar happen last season with the Four Nations face-off, where obviously the NHL went, on a bit of a pause. And in the week or so after the NHL resumed playing, after the Four Nations face-off, we saw somewhere in the ballpark of more than a half dozen major trades. And those were deals that in all likelihood were sort of discussed and consummated even over that break. One of the major ones was Seth Jones going to Florida for a first-round pick and Spencer Knight. And that deal came out not long after the end of the Four Nations. My guess is that we are going to see a couple of different flurries here. We're going to see a flurry of activity right after the Four Nations, or pardon me, after the Olympics, right after we get back, sort of at the end of February. And then maybe we'll get into a bit of a lull, and then it'll ramp up again onto deadline day. So my guess is if I really had to put a number on it, it sounds to me like we're going to see maybe something on Blake Coleman very soon after the Olympic break. Now, it's entirely possible that with Blake Coleman, teams will want to see him get into a game or a couple of games after the break to make sure that he's still Blake Coleman. Although I don't really think there are many doubts about that, but still, he's missed a little bit of time and he should be ready to go by the time that the Olympics are over. And then maybe Nazem Kadri goes more up until the wire. We've seen Kadri play a little bit better in recent games. He obviously was going to play better in that game against Toronto. He got up for that one and was playing very well on that one. And I don't doubt that there will be plenty of expressions of interest. I mean, just from the rawest possible angle with Kadri, I mean, what we've seen with Artemi Panarin and with Rasmus Andersson have been a couple of different things at play. With Andersson, he was able to take control of the way that the discussions went because he had to re-sign. And with Panarin, it was the full no move. Well, Kadri doesn't have a full no move. He's got only a 13-team list. And he also has the term left on his deal. And so that gives the Flames a lot more negotiating leverage. It allows them to pit teams against each other. What we have heard in the last couple of weeks is that Nazem Kadri would not have to formally waive his clause to get a trade to the Montreal Canadiens, for example. There are undoubtedly lots more teams where there would be mutual interest that are not governed by the specifics of this clause. The other thing, which Ken discusses in the chat just now, is the prospect to me of taking possibly Patrick Laine's contract back from the Montreal Canadiens. To me, it makes all kinds of sense. It only runs until the end of the season. You might see Montreal retain a little bit on it. It's something where the Flames can give this guy a tryout, sort of like they did with Anthony Mantha a couple of years ago. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, great. It's over at the end of the year. But if it works, maybe you make it into a one-year deal after this season and let Laine rebuild his value. And then that's a player who you can maybe look to flip in the future. Laine, to me, is the ideal piece that the Calgary Flames should be looking at. And he's also the only one who really makes sense as a cap equalizing piece from Montreal, a cap casualty or a cap dump, if it were. Because guys like Josh Anderson and Brendan Gallagher are playing well for Montreal right now, and Laine is very much the odd man out. So if there's an opportunity to deal, say, Kadri to Montreal and get Laine as a piece coming back, not as the piece, obviously, maybe even a piece to sweeten the return. If maybe Montreal expects Calgary to take that contract and be paid to take on that contract, maybe that's a way to make that return even better. So, I think it's a really, really interesting way of maybe looking at this as two ways of leveraging both sides of the deal. I think the Flames have a really interesting avenue forward, possibly making a deal with the Montreal Canadiens. So, on the Barbie, is that enough Calgary Flames talk for you? Just joshing you, buddy. But hey, we hope to see you again on the Afterburner, where we probably will discuss a few of these topics again. It'll be myself and my buddy Kent Wilson, where we'll be talking about the game. We'll be talking about the upcoming Olympics. We'll be talking about the trade and the news that we saw coming out today. But also, some of the Gavin McKenna stuff probably as well. I mean, I did see an interesting point that was made in the comments where, Gavin McKenna getting into a fight it's the sort of thing that if it happened on the ice, nobody would really care. I don't know. I mean, we just don't have many specifics yet, right? From the sounds of it, there was maybe family involved. We just don't know yet. But hopefully it all just works out, and hopefully nobody is the worse for wear in the long term. So we shall see. Fubar 1982 AWOL saying, Mike, retain on Kadri and Coleman without retention. Maybe. I mean, if you take the line deal back, does that open up the door for you to retain on Coleman and maybe not on Kadri? I think there's a lot of ways that they could look at it. I think it is very good that the Flames are possibly going to retain on 3 players in a single season for the first time ever. Like, to me, if you're a rebuilding team, you should be leveraging those 3 retention spots to the maximum. You should be using all 3 of them, because not doing so is, in my opinion, an opportunity cost. And you should really be leveraging that to the fullest extent. If you're only using 2 of those spots, it's a missed opportunity to me. So I think the Flames should and likely will use at least, use it on one of those guys. They have other ways that they can retain salary as well if there's a 3-team deal that comes along. But in all likelihood, the biggest and best way that they can do it is on Coleman or Kadri. And to me, at least, I mean, if you retain on Coleman now, you can probably retain on Kadri in the summer, and you can do both. And it's the Kadri deal does make a little bit more sense as a summertime deal to me, but by the same token, you don't want to risk missing the boat either. And with Kadri, we've seen some ups and downs. I am still of the opinion that he's the same player largely that he's been throughout his Flames tenure. Ups and downs and productions be damned to a certain extent, but I can understand wanting to get ahead of it a little bit and not be stuck with a contract that all of a sudden you can't move. So 2 ways about it. Not entirely sure the way that I would go about it, but I think the Flames will. I think the Flames have built up a decent amount of goodwill with some of the moves that they have made. If they can come up with another solid return in the same ballpark of what they got for Rasmus Andersson and either one of those 2 players, I'd be happy. And if they can move both of them, that'd be fantastic. If they can move one of their depth defensemen as well, perfect. And if you can get some reclamation projects in the process, I mean, that's the thing. A team like the Flames needs as many reclamation projects as it can get, especially when, as it stands right now, it's not like you are clamoring to see a billion guys from the farm. There may be a couple of guys from the farm who you'd like to see. You'd maybe like to see more of Rory Cairns and Sam Morton, but in all likelihood, the Flames already have all the guys they need to bring up right here, right now. And so as it were, if you can take a swing on a guy like a Patrick Laine for the rest of the season and see where that takes you, to me, that is even, it's more of a feature than a bug, if you understand me. So just a couple of ways about it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Flames handle things after the Olympics. Until then, though, the tank maybe continues tonight, but really it's a win-win. If the Flames lose, maybe they're one step closer to picking first overall. And will it be Gavin McKenna? Who knows? But if they win, they've beaten the Oilers, and there's never a bad time to beat the Edmonton Oilers, no matter what year it is, no matter where the Flames are in the standings. I remember one of my earliest hockey memories, watching that Steve Stais late tie-in goal, Flames versus Oilers at Rexall Place, 2011. The Flames won that game in a shootout. The Flames weren't a playoff team that year. The Oilers weren't a playoff team that year. The Flames drafted Sven Berchi in the first round that year. It didn't really end up mattering all that much, but it was the Flames beating the Oilers in 2011, and nothing felt better to little old me at the time than seeing that. So maybe we'll see something else like that tonight. There's not a whole lot more opportunities to watch a Battle of Alberta at the Scotiabank Saddledome, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it on television. Either way, we hope that you will tune in after the game for more on the network. It'll be myself, Mike Gould, along with Kent Wilson here on Afterburner. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of The Warmies. My name is Mike Gould. For my producer, Michael, out in Toronto, thank you for tuning in. This is Sports Interaction Show. One more time, go to sportsinteraction.com/FlamesNation for all the bets, the props, and the lines. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Enjoy the game. Enjoy all the rumors and what have you out there. I'm sure Barnburner will have more on it tomorrow. Until then, you've been watching The Warmies.
Hey, buddies, thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Also, if you could throw in a like and subscribe, it does help us out with what it is we are doing. And check out more at flamesnation.ca.